Good evening. Welcome to the City Commission Work Session, Tuesday, October 26th. Would you call the roll, please, Jared?
Mayor McCullough?
Yes.
Commissioner Adamchak?
Here.
Commissioner Opelt?
Here.
Commissioner Mata?
Here.
Commissioner Minton?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the Aggieville Waste Services. Before that, do we want to discuss whether we have public comment?
I move that we allow public comment
Second.
this meeting.
Moved and seconded. Would you call the roll?
Commissioner Adamchak?
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt?
Yes.
Commissioner Mata?
Yes.
Commissioner Minton?
Yes.
Mayor McCullough?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Jason?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We wanted to take a few moments this evening to talk about Aggieville waste and trash. It was part of our 2017 Aggieville vision where a recommendation came to consolidate trash and grease in the district, give it an opportunity to, excuse me, to clean up our alleys and make them more walkable. We have a lot of pedestrians going down our alleys. They're utilized a lot like our sidewalks in Aggieville. We also conducted an analysis in 2021, further providing other options and recommendations for how we could go about consolidating trash. The study itself identified 80 different trash and recycling containers within the area of Aggieville. At that time, there were 10 to 15 grease containers within the 4 alleys themselves. We have a number of haulers in the community. I think we still have 6, we may have 7, multiple grease collectors. In my most recent venture down there to take inventory of grease, you'll see the pictures at the end. We had 7 currently, but we're also trying to explore coming through that direct pump through the wall system scenario as well. We don't want to give up on that. The consultant recommended a number of different ways to approach this, and at one time we had talked about taking on almost a 2-year process to isolate and provide trash services in Aggieville. Since then, we've had a lot of conversations and want to try an approach here where if we can bring a hauler in to an agreement with us to approach Aggieville, get some ideas, put together a plan. There's a couple different ways we want to talk about paying for it, but if we can create these centrally located compactors or some sort of trash service a methodology that works in Aggieville, then we could bring back that to not only you as governing body members, but to the district itself and get reactions from the businesses and those who are down there every day. So the objectives of the request for qualifications, we're attempting to select a hauler to provide or a provider to assist us with the waste collection plan. So the district itself, we've had some analysis from a group from outside the community. We really want a local hauler to work with us preferably, but we'll look, if anybody else is interested. We'd like them to have a really solid understanding of Aggieville, bring some ideas and some approaches to the table, some of which we fully expect will be similar to what our consultant suggested back in 21, but also just look at different collection options and trying to maximize that efficiency within the district itself. We have a phase 1, which is really a information gathering phase, but with the hauler and the provider on the team, we'll be able to run different scenarios and look at options for how trash is collected, how it could be collected in the future. We have an opportunity right now with the property in 4 of the 5 general locations accessible and a willingness from property owners. If we get to a point where the cost analysis looks good, the operational and maintenance is something that the commission desires to move forward with, then phase 2 would be to move forward with purchasing. that equipment, implementing a collection process, and looking for a multi-year agreement for those services with the financing options. If compactors are selected, let's say, and there's 5 locations, we priced that out previously with BHS to create that environment to finance that setup. You know, it was 1.2 to 1.4 million. That didn't include the compactors themselves. It didn't include the monthly or annual service. All these things need to be identified and brought back before the governing body for that direction and that decision. Possible timeline, we're looking to get the RFQ out by the middle of September. I would take questions for roughly a week. We'd get those addendums out to the group of individuals or businesses that would like to propose. We'd have those due October 3rd. Selection committee would start reviewing those. We'd set up interviews later in October, and then we'd look to come to that first meeting, roughly that first meeting in November, with a recommendation. And then we'd look to have those phase 1 services really complete within a couple months and have something in early 2026 to recommend. We are a bit in a hurry here. We've got an opportunity with the Hampton to work with the ownership to come off that alley with a location. We have another opportunity with the same owner at Handy Corner. We own the lot next to what used to be known as Hunam. And then we obviously have the infrastructure out on Little Morrow next to Good Sense that we could utilize. The 5th location is the site roughly around Starbucks and where the food truck is for Varsity. We don't have public property there, but there is surface area there where we could possibly work with that owner to implement an area-wide collection point. I'm going to hop into Greece a little bit. We know there's currently 7 dumpsters, bins in the Aggieville district. We would prefer to work with a third party that could also work, have relationships with the tenants in our downtown. But there are internal grease collection and disposal systems that don't require staff to walk out of the business with buckets or some sort of container with the grease and make their way to these bins that are spread throughout the district itself. They're not sightly. They don't have the best odor in the world. And we'd love to be able to clean them up and provide a different alternative to that particular service. So it's a short presentation tonight. We'd really like to get started, get a hauler in here, a provider, to work with staff to bring some options back to you all and look at this comprehensively. In the memo, I did mention a couple different ways potentially to look at the financing on this. I think it's difficult to throw out too many specifics, but we have used transit guest tax in our Aggieville and downtown districts. A lot of visitors come to Manhattan in those districts. Could be an opportunity to help pay for some of the infrastructure and for the maintenance, the long-term service agreements as well. Is an option to also look at the BID. All those businesses down there are either paying directly or indirectly for their trash services. If it got consolidated, we were able to provide the service. Possibly that could roll into the business improvement district fees. You all set those. You adopt those annually by ordinance in October. You do have advisory boards for both downtown and Aggieville. I would expect it to work through that process and see if there is concurrence. But ultimately, that decision does come back to the governing body in October of each year, just how the business improvement district is operated and managed. So you do have that flexibility. What questions can I answer
Yes.
this evening?
Questions for Jason?
Jason, have you had discussions with the Aggieville business owners?
We have numerous times, not recently. Obviously in 17 and 21, they were heavily involved in a lot of those discussions. I I do feel like we're at a point where they're aware there's different options. They're aware some alternatives. If we can get it a little bit more narrow, we would absolutely anticipate taking a lot of this approach back to the ABA or the BID board, or just general conversations with the district itself to get reactions and feedback.
I guess one of my specific questions would have to do with the grease collection. And is that something that would be cost shared between the business owner and the city? What would be the financing for that?
It's several months ago, but I know Dennis Cook and I, the ABA president, executive director. I'll give you all kinds of titles, Dennis, if you'd like me to. But
Emperor.
yeah, there are companies that'll come in and actually put the infrastructure in if you sign a 12-month type of contract with them. So there's options out there to where it could be rather low cost to get it established. I'm not familiar with what it costs on a monthly. We need to become familiar with that. We also need to understand just how many companies are available. Starting with trash, it'll allow us to explore probably the more costly initiative when it comes to grease and trash. But we do need to keep looking from a grease perspective. We also legally need to keep exploring what options we do have. What kind of mandate can you have with grease? We have grease trap programs where we are actually into these businesses and making sure they're collecting the grease effectively, so it's not going into our storm drain or even our sewer. So yeah, we obviously have some regulation on it. Can we take it to the point where we're requiring these internal systems through the PVC pipes to be removed from a truck and a pump? We are going to continue to explore that.
Jason, we have to put anything out there for businesses? Well, I'll back up. I think my worry is with these more centralized locations, people getting their trash to them might be an area of concern. I guess how much do we know on average, like distance that it's adding to the businesses? I mean, I'm picturing somebody hauling a leaking trash bag all the way over much further than where they used to go.
It is part of our list of questions we have for the haulers themselves. We would prefer to have carts that are on wheels that businesses have access to. We would also prefer, if it's a compactor or some sort of dumpster, is there a way out there, technology, infrastructure, to help lift that trash into the dumpsters or the bins or the compactor itself? I'm familiar with residential compactors where there can be assist. I'm not sure about a commercial district, just what you can find, but we would prefer that the bags not be drug through the district. We would prefer those, if they're in a bin, they're on wheels and they're not leaking. I think we can help identify through our relationship with this provider hauler alternatives to dragging the sacks through the district.
I seem to remember that when we've talked about this maybe a year ago, one of the concerns was safety for staff who would be leaving establishments at 1 or 1:30 in the morning and walking through the alleys unaccompanied.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to provide an answer, but I think you need to be cognizant of that as a potential issue. I don't know if there's ways to have a buddy system to walk towards the trash compactor, or if lighting in the alleys will be sufficiently improved such that it's less risky than it might otherwise be.
You bring up a great point, and it's one in which the alley in between 12th Street and North Manhattan that is bound by Morrow and Laramie, it will be our first alley that we are redoing with businesses on either side. We have eliminated the overhead power, and this is the first finished product that we anticipate. We have asked Olson, we asked the hotel, and we looked at our own infrastructure, and lighting is going to be significant in that alley. We've been shown plans, provided alternatives. It being the first alley, we obviously want to make it clean and we want to make it safe. The challenge we have really moving forward, even if we didn't do consolidated trash, I would encourage you to walk through the alleys. There are areas where the trash cans can be, and there are areas where they're just really hard to be. They've tried to put these really thin dumpsters that run, a pretty good distance and they open up, but even those are problematic in the alleys themselves. We have very narrow alleys. We send a lot of deliveries and trucks and a lot of different services provided through that alley. So this is the first alley. This is the first attempt to try to make them more pedestrian friendly, safe, and clean. The other three alleys really have a lot of challenges, and they'll have to come along as either development takes place or it is the next phase of redevelopment. We do believe the Handy Corner Alley is going to be next. Buildings have come down. It's been an anticipated development, but you get up to Hunam and the K-State Bank lot, obviously expected something to happen there. It hasn't, but eventually where Popeyes and all that comes together, we would anticipate, a redevelopment that would give us an opportunity to take care of the overhead lines and the alley improvements themselves. So it's kind of a long-winded question. I do think there's a plan to get there.
My question was.
Yeah, I know. It's about lighting, but we're talking about just really a comprehensive investment in the alleys, which was anticipated in the 2017. It's easier to do when there's development going on either side, and we can finish that alley without putting construction traffic right back on top of it. So we do have a plan. We do envision that lighting and that safety and health being a big part of that future design and construction. It's not going to all be done at one time, though. We know that.
Jason, I'm not familiar with any placement of security cameras in Aggieville. I know there are some. That's not something I've looked into, but that would be something that I'd also suggest that is considered during this process.
Riley County Police Department has several, and they're on a lot of our light poles. We have specific agreements with them to do that. It's not going to shock me if they're coming back in on the alleys as well.
Thank you.
Speaking of security, is there a way that we can physically secure the compactors or whatever, and this is maybe be something we need to think about, and still allow for multiple parties to have access to it?
Yep, and we're looking probably more specifically at the hotel, the Hampton going in that block between 12th and North Manhattan. Specifically, I've seen designs, I've seen different alternatives, and it really at that point was like, we need a hauler. We need a hauler to know what works and what doesn't. It doesn't make sense for us to put something in place that we can't find a hauler to serve. So it's the timing of it is really imperative that we get that entity on board so we can look at options and recognize they have the ability to serve that area.
Okay.
Jason, one suggestion I just have on the RFQ is for phase one is to gather information from Aggieville Business Association or the business owners. It's not listed as much on the
Yeah.
RFQ, but have that be something that the hauler would be responsible for gathering feedback
Yeah.
from them.
Yeah, and we can incorporate that into the first bullet for sure.
John, do you have any questions or?
No, I don't have any questions. I think this is something that we need to do, but I'm very interested in hearing what Aggieville and the folks have to say.
I would just echo that. We're really doing some wonderful things to Aggieville to make it more attractive. And as someone who often walks to Aggieville to dine and goes down the alleys, because it's quicker, those alleys are really disgusting. I'm sorry, but they really are. And, it's just, and you can get into so many of the Morrow Street businesses, from the alley, if you're coming from the east, south, anyway. This is just a question. Is there any thought into recycling? Aluminum's up to 45 cents a pound now, and, you hate to see it all just compacted. That would probably be up to the individual.
I think that's a question and a topic I'd like to have with the haulers as well. They may have some intuitive ideas to separate those things and make it possibly easier on them. We know we have local entities that do recycling, but we also know multiple providers have that option out there for folks. That recycling industry is one that we know has moved over time, but we do know there's folks still running their recycling around and setting it apart. I think it makes sense Dennis and I were talking about that just in the history of Aggieville and some of the recycling efforts. So I think it's a topic we definitely need to address, and we will.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Is there any public comment on this? Just come up, please, and give your name and address, and then sign in.
All right, well, there's no signing paper.
Sign in over here.
Oh.
No, you can.
Okay. My name is Jacob Stoltz. My address is 4514 Freeman Road. I just have a quick comment since you guys brought it up about the light in, the overhead wires in the alleys. I think they actually look kind of charming. Well, I do agree the alleys need to be cleaned and, made more pedestrian friendly. Even if you make them like dead wires, I think they do look cool and they add an appeal to Aggieville as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Now, go sign in, thank you. Other comments?
Come on, guys, we need feedback.
Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. And what kind of direction, I think it's pretty clear the direction we're giving.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. This
Add
is
your
the optimum
chance.
time to do it.
I think I've asked around for some of the business owners and stuff. I think it's generally a pretty well accepted idea. So if they're not up here screaming about it, I guess we can assume it's pretty good.
Okay, we'll move on to the 2026 budget. And Danielle.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Exit out of here real quick. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come before you and talk about our 2026 annual budget. The budget is the most important policy document that we put together every year. And so it is always a pleasure to be able to work with you all to put that together and figure out how we are going to fund city services that we provide in the following year. This is, again, a slide that you all have seen multiple times, but just kind of wanted to run through that budget strategy, and then also wanted to just take a few minutes to kind of walk through a few other things. Budget strategy, we wanted a transparent and engaging budget process. We were trying to close the revenue and expenditure gap, presenting a balanced budget for 2026 and moving forward, and then starting to work on those short, mid, and long-term strategies to grow our local economy. This evening, what the direction we are looking for tonight is what the mill levy should be published in the newspaper for the 2026 budget hearing on September 16th. So the revenue neutral rate was noticed at 55.109 mils. So that was a maximum increase of 2 mils. We cannot exceed a 2 mil increase on September 16th, but we can adopt less than a 2 mil increase on September 16th. However, we need to decide if we want to go ahead and publish that that notice for that hearing on the 16th at 2, or if we want to publish one of these other scenarios that you all asked me to look into and spend a little bit more time with the last time we met on this. Also wanted to talk a little bit about when we put together the city manager goals in January, and we also put together our goal retreat, the goals from our governing body retreat that we also had in January. So kind of meshing those two things, one of the city manager's goals was to establish financial stability. And then the commission's from the commission retreat, we were going to continue working on our financial situation after the 2025 budget development process. And one of the goals for the commission, 2 of those goals, was to have a funded capital improvement plan, as well as being able to provide for staff raises. There was also, though, a desire to try to keep the mill levy at a reasonable increase and not try to raise property taxes. So when we look at what our revenue assumptions are, again, a 3% increase in the water and wastewater rates, a 6% increase in stormwater rates, which equates to about 75 cents for equivalent residential unit. We are projecting a 1.5% growth in sales tax revenue. As a reminder, that is very conservative. However, we know that there are factors that are happening in 2026 that give us reason to want to be conservative with our growth in sales tax. We are also assuming that we are going to capture our growth from the property tax, from the property assessed valuation increases. So that equates to about $1.4 million just from the increases in property values. So the three different scenarios that we were talked about at our last commission meeting, and the two additional, first scenario is that 1.134 mil increase that generates an additional $2.31 million for the Riley County Police Department and the library. You all asked us to put together two different scenarios. So scenario B is a 1.35 mil increase, and then scenario C is a 1.75 mil increase. You can see up there, scenario B generates an additional 2.47 million, and scenario C is a 2.77 million. The number for RCPD and library does not change, but what does change is for the general fund.
Could you go back to that slide? I mean, you're saying 2.3 million for RCPT and library, but actually it's 1.8 million for RCPD and library with another 495 because of revenue growth for the city services. I mean, the 2.31 million isn't all just for RCPD and library.
That's correct. I apologize. The mill levy, the 1.134.
The mill levy, yes, but not the dollars.
Apologize for that. Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Mata. The total increase. So for scenario A, I'm kind of outlining all of those. Scenario A includes a 1.088 mil increase for the Riley County Police Department for a total of 1.63. That will generate an additional $813,000 for RCPD. The library mill increase is 0.046, which is a $34,000 increase for the library. And then for city services, we are proposing a 0 mill levy increase, and so we would just be capturing that. We're staying within our growth of that assessed valuation and just capturing that growth of that $495,000. This scenario does not include any cost of living adjustments or any annual salary adjustments for city employees. However, it does contemplate an opportunity to be able to provide a one-time retention bonus for city employees. Scenario A aligns our expenditures with our projected revenues. We actually decreased the general fund expenditures by about $460,000 from the 2025 budgeted expenditures. This scenario does not use one-time money for any ongoing expenses like new services or salary increases. I want to talk about scenario C first, a little out of order here, but scenario C is a mill levy increase of 1.75. So again, that top half there, which is those outside city services that we do levy a mill for, stays the same. However, the change here is that general fund where we have an increase of a 0.616, which would generate an additional about $460,000 for general fund. This would be used likely for the cost of living adjustments, and it would also allow for us to do those annual salary adjustments per policy. Again, this is important for us to have those reoccurring expenses, or that reoccurring revenue stream for any of those ongoing expenses that we would incur, such as salary increases. Scenario B is in between both of those scenarios. It is an increase of a 0.216, and it generates an additional $160,000 for the general fund, which would allow us to do a cost of living adjustment. It would also provide us an opportunity to possibly, if revenues are coming in, contemplate those one-time retention bonuses for city staff as well. I think in conclusion, as we're kind of wrapping up this conversation, scenario A is a fiscally responsible approach to the budget this year. It provides a transparent funding source for the Riley County Police Department requirement and for the library's funding request. It actually balances the provision of city services with staff pay without jeopardizing our financial position. And the 1.134 mil increase is the minimum increase needed to maintain our current levels of services. Scenario C is also a responsible approach, but it does prioritize recurring revenue source for ongoing expenses, such as salary increases or increases, for example, in our property and liability insurance. I don't know if you all recall from July 8th, but one of those increases that we did have is our property and liability insurance actually went up by about $300,000 for 2026 as well. Scenario B is, again, as I said, is sort of middle ground between scenario A and scenario C. Again, I just want to remind the Commission of those goals that were set forward for establishing financial stability, continuing to build on the hard work that was done during the 2025 budget development process. So again, there was an increase in the mill levy to prevent the spending down of the cash balances that we had. Projected in 2024 for developing the 2025 budget, we were rapidly spending down that cash balance, and so there needed to be an increase in that mill levy to be able to shore that up and to stop that excessive spending of our cash balance. So again, a lot of hard work and difficult decisions were made in 2025. So I want to continue building on that success, and we develop the budget for 2026. And then also understanding that there is an opportunity for us as we head into the next budget year. We're always working on the budget. I feel like we never really take a break from budget development because it's such an important part of what we do. But as we head into 2026, one of those big conversations that we want to have with the Commission is really working towards a 2-year budget. So having a budget a budget process that is developed that would allow us to really look at the decisions that we have made in 2026 and how those decisions will impact 2027 as well as 2028 and how those decisions ripple through over time. So either one of these scenarios, scenario A, scenario B, or scenario C, is setting the city up for success and really preparing us to continue providing the great quality of services that we provide. So the other thing I kind of wanted to touch base on real quickly here, just for clarification. Tonight, we are talking about the mill levy, and we are talking about the mill levy that is applied to real property. But we actually have a $175 million budget. Between, kind of depending on which scenario we end up choosing this evening, about $38 to $41 million of that $175 million is property tax. The rest is sales tax, utility fees, user fees, fines, other revenue sources that we have coming into the city. So just wanted to kind of keep that in perspective. And then, of course, of that $38 to $41 million that is generated by property tax, about 60% of that goes for the RCPD and library, and then the remainder is for those general fund and those city services that we do provide. So even though we are only talking about the property tax revenues that are generated from real property taxes tonight, we do have a total of $175 million budget that we are responsible for putting together and getting adopted on September 16th. So with that, I will stand for any questions, but really anticipating a lot of discussion amongst commissioners this evening.
Questions for Danielle?
I do have questions for Danielle, but I'm going to go through one of my convoluted numbers, schemes, things here. I did bring schedules that I can give you, and I just sent you it on an email if you wanted to put it on the screen.
I am not logged into my email account, and I am a little hesitant to do that, knowing that this is being broadcasted. Not that I'm worried about anything I'm exchanging, but stuff that people send me. No. Okay. Jason, did you copy Jason on that by chance?
No, but I can, as long as he pops up easily on my personal email.
Sorry, Danielle, while John's looking at
someone
that,
else.
on scenario B, and I'm sure you said it, there were a lot of numbers. What is our general fund expenditure in scenario B? Does that make sense?
Yes. So your general fund expenditure in scenario B is, so the total will be about
Our,
30.
our operating budget, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be about 38,000,000.16. 38,160,000. So this generates
For
an
B- for
additional,
B?
for B, yeah. For your total general fund operating. So our general fund expenditures are slated to be, so for scenario A, it was about 37.1 something. And then for scenario B, that would be about $160,000 more than what scenario A generates and provides for general fund expenditures.
Okay.
Does that make sense? No.
It's just that, really, because when we put together the budget book, I was just trying to see what kind of overall adjustment that would be. I think the first ones, I was thinking we were coming in under 38 million, because I thought the full 2 mills brought that general fund expenditure to 38.1 million. It's fine. I was digging
No,
through all of my stuff.
You are correct. So it was as I'm backing the math out here, so our
Don't you like it when we
total
put you on the spot
expenditures-
and ask you really big numbers and
I
want you to
love
do
it.
math right on the spot? Sorry about that.
So our 2025 budgeted expenditures was 38 million flat. And so what we are projecting in 2026 is approximately $460,000 less than 38 million. You are correct. And so then it would be whatever 38 million minus 460,000 is plus 160.
Thank you.
Yeah. Those are rounded numbers to the closest 10,000 ballparking. So Jason went to go upload and so that we could pull that up on the screen for you, Commissioner Amata. But did you have a question in the meantime while we figure out the technical aspect of this?
Really, it hinges on the schedule. Really, what I'm doing is taking the schedule and walking through the shift in RCPD budget from other city funding to property tax funding, and then a couple of other items that we should have had savings in but don't see reflected in the in property tax savings. And so when I recalculate those things in, and I actually go back to last year as well, I end up with what amounts to close to a 40% city services property tax increase. And so when I get to that number, I'm like, I think we need to sharpen the pencil.
So you're seeing a 40% increase from 2026 taxes levied compared to the 2025 taxes levied?
24.
He's only looking at the city services
Only
total.
looking at city services and looking at it from combining both the 26 to 24. Can you blow it up?
So you're comparing 2024 to 2026?
Right, but I take it 1 year at a time.
Okay.
So if you look at the 2026 to 25 budget, per year schedule, you've got the RCPD property tax, the variance due to RCPD at $1.6 million. Okay, but the actual RCPD budget increase was $1.2 million. So we're shifting 383,000 from all those other things you just talked about to property tax. Now, we bring up the delinquency rate, but the delinquency rate of 3% on the RCBD budget would be about $700,000, which you're having to cover that year after year after year. So it'd really only be the change in the delinquency rate that should be the delta. And 380,000, I mean, that's 60% increase or something in the delinquency rate. So to me, that's just money that I'm just adding to your city services spending, because you're increasing the RCPD line for a lot more money than you need to cover the increase. So to me, that's just a shift of funding.
So, so we had, last year, in 2024, there was no money budgeted for RCPD delinquency, either in the RCPD budget or in city services. We ended up paying $368,000 from general fund to cover the delinquencies for RCPD. In 2025, it was about a $263,000. Thank you, Susan. There was about $263,000 that was budgeted for RCPD, that was put into that. 236, thank you. $236,000 that was budgeted. We do not know what that delinquency rate is going to be. And so when we look at the requirement that RCPD gave us, which was that 24.07, and we calculate a 2 to 3% delinquency rate, we are estimating that we're going to have about $500,000 of delinquent property taxes. And so we did not budget for that in the general fund. That is correct. We are budgeting for that in RCPD.
Well, I have your budget sheet. You're paying for it for the year before, year over year. Whether you budgeted or not, it's a delta for year over year. Why you wouldn't budget when you have to pay it every single year, I don't know. But I'm looking at year over year expenses. And for year over year expenses, it's you're shifting $383 of property tax that you had to pay or have to pay somehow out of those other line items. And now those other line items aren't going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, and as we talked about, right, we did see other city services increases. For example, our property and liability has gone up. There have been other cost of services that have gone up. So as we did move, for example, animal control services, we moved those out. We transferred that to RCPD, and so we did see a decrease in the fire department related to that. But those savings that we have seen from making some of those shifts, of course, are being eaten up by other increase in costs that we're seeing. So really trying to stay flat with our expenditures, despite some of those other increases that we're seeing by moving these other things around.
No, I'm not arguing with you on that. All I'm trying to do is, by going through these numbers, I'm just painting the picture of showing exactly how much we're really increasing the city services spending when we take into account known shifts and known savings. And so when I get to my bottom line number, which is going to end up being a 40% increase over 2 years, I'm just saying that's an awful lot.
We're not, okay. I don't agree with.
Can you let me, are you afraid of them being challenged and have to explain their
No,
budget?
I don't agree with the way that you're analyzing this. So I'm just going to say that.
So, and again, then there's the 300,000 for the ACO savings, which again, isn't taking the numbers down. They're being used to spend some, albeit the increases that you could be saving. And then we had another 100,000 savings from the opioid, because that social services took that budget down. And again, we don't see that reflected in the savings. It's being used to pay something else. So when I say total property tax discretionary increase, is I'm saying there's $783,000 worth of funds that, to my mind, is being thrown back into the city services budget. Okay. Then when I said, well, why don't I go back and look at what happened last year, and it was more dramatic on the shift from RCPD to the City Services Fund, because the property tax increase was $2.2 million compared to the actual RPC variance of about $1.5 million, so about $716,000 got, in my mind, shifted to the city services budget last year. So between the 2 years, we had about a 1.1 million shift between the two. So then I just took it and I started with your 3.81 analysis, because we had the three budget scenarios. I went with the lowest one. So in that one, we have city services. Now the total budget went up like 13% for property taxes, but just on the city services side, it went up more like 28%. Actually, it was because of our CPD not going up that much that we ended up with the lower total number.
I'm not tracking that piece of it, John.
Well, when you look at last year, city services went up 23%. I'm saying when you look at the total, if you look at our total property tax increase last year, it only went up like about 13%, because that's because RCPD helped bring the number down. Because city services went up 23, RCPD didn't go up nearly as much. So that's why between the two, we averaged less. You disagree?
No, it's made up numbers.
No, they're not. They're real numbers. You can.
You just
calculate-
said in your mind that these numbers work
No.
right.
What
So
was the property tax increase last year?
I don't know off the top of my head, John.
It was around 13%.
But you're manipulating these numbers in a way that is, I think, inappropriate.
Why is it you always have to challenge me challenging the staff?
You're not challenging the staff with actual data, John. You're manipulating these in a way to tell your
You can
story.
balance all these numbers back to them.
But the
What's
way that
wrong-
you're accounting for them, the lines you're putting them in, is up to your opinion. And you're saying, you're making it look like we had a
It's
41% increase in property taxes? That's not right.
Is it my opinion that the RCBD budget only went up $1.25 million?
Because you're taking out other savings because they're there.
No, that's the number.
That's not the.
Yes, well,
We have to pay them $1.6 million more than we paid them last year.
no, we don't.
To Commissioner Mata's point, what they are asking for, and what that increase is a $1.25 million. I agree.
The delta.
I agree with that. What I am shifting is the 500, an estimated, a projected, trying to be fiscally sound and prudent, knowing that we would have to budget for $500,000 transfer from general fund to pay for our CPD when their property taxes do not come in as projected. We've talked a little bit about the management oversight that I have a city manager over Parks and Rec, over Public Works, over all of our other city services that we provide. So when those revenues start coming in, and let's say they're short, and we know that midway through the year that we are not having a good year, and we know, like, for example, this year, where we were at last year at this time was 95%, and where we're at this year at this time is 92%. I can go to the Parks Department and I can go to Public Works and I can tell them we are not going to be able to, provide that particular service, or we are going to have to pull back in that area. I need you to tighten your, your purse strings. No travel is going to be had. I do not have that luxury to provide that management oversight for Riley County Police Department. I cannot go to Director Pete and say, hey, property taxes are only at 92%, and we're expecting a delinquency, so I need you to not purchase X, Y, and Z. I don't have that authority. So we do not have that authority as the commission to say, we only collected 92% of property taxes this year, so you're only going to get 92% of the requirement that you provided us. So I am proposing that we include a delinquency an estimated delinquency in that
But
requirement.
you've been paying delinquency every year.
Out of the
But
general
out of
fund.
the general fund, not.
So that's the general fund savings if you do that. So it's a shift to property tax to spend. I mean, that's what it is. That's what I'm saying. We're shifting that, that money.
Yeah.
It's not that the police department did it. It's not that their costs are going up that much.
I-
We're just making a decision to shift it to property tax versus the other revenue streams that we've used in the past.
I do agree with Commissioner Mata on that point. He is correct. We are shifting that expense from the general fund to RCPD. I believe it's more transparent to show where that actual cost is coming from. And as we were seeing other costs in the general fund go up, we needed to be able to provide, the only opportunity that we have to be able to provide for those services through general fund is with those sales taxes and with those property taxes that we have coming in.
Yeah, and
That is
actually,
why
I
I'm
don't have a
proposing-
problem with shifting it. In fact, according to, we're at a state statute because we're not doing all of it through property tax today. The issue is, as it's shifting, I would say shift it, but then take down those other property tax items so that net, there isn't an increase in property tax. But what we're doing is we're shifting and just increasing the property tax, which all I'm saying is that I want to say, well, that to me is we're spending more on property tax really to fund those extra city service items. That we're shifting money, kind of like the sales tax we did for roads. We said we're going to increase the spending on the streets. All we did was took the general fund money out, and no longer is that part of the budget. So the sales tax didn't help improve the streets. It's just now the whole street budget.
I think we could probably take a look at that, and we could do a work session on that, and really kind of look at where those dollars go. We understand that what the money that was included in the general fund for street improvements and why we did the additional sales taxes so that we could continue providing for those operating expenses, those employees, the trucks, the equipment, all of that is still being paid for through the general fund. So I would love to dive into that a little bit and do more analysis on that, because that's the second or third time that we've had that conversation. So I want to spend a little time and dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, all I'm trying to point out is that what in this budget, we've shifted a lot of money to property tax, which I don't have for paying for the RCPD, that is going to provide savings in a lot of other items that could have been used to save money on the property tax side of the city services, but we chose not to do that. And so therefore, we have this larger tax increase. And if you were to take all that into account over the last 2 years, if we went with the very bottom budget of 3.81, it really, when you add it all over 2 years, is more like a 40% tax increase because we just shifted the money around. You know, so to me, and that's where I'm just saying, I would have hoped we could have done better than that in the budget.
Sure. I appreciate that feedback.
Could I just point out that this is probably the 5th time we've talked about the budget, and we all had a chance in June to look through the many, 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 many pages of the budget. And I think it's our role here is to see how we can provide city services, many of which are life-threatening without them, in the most efficient, effective, inexpensive way we can. And Danielle has given us a budget, and then she's given us options if we really feel, as I do, that we need to do something more for the staff. So I think at this point, discussing the ins and outs of the RCPD, we've had months we had that budget since June. I think it's important that we go on and talk about.
Yeah, it's really not RCPD, it's just really understanding how much more money is going into the city services. And having have an understanding of the real numbers.
But John,
That it's just a shift, a lot of it's
we
just a
only
shift.
pay for RCPD out of the general fund and property taxes. We don't pay for it out of sales tax.
It's being paid for by other than just property tax right now.
Would you like for us to pay more property taxes for that, John?
I'm fine, just lower the other property tax items, because once we move it to RCPD, we should have the savings in those others. I think that would be an excellent idea. I already brought up, let's make it all police and fire, and, which you might be able to throw one other thing in there, and then everyone would know, property taxes, police, fire, and whatever we put in there, versus this, let's lower it here so it looks like we're spending less here.
I was just gonna ask if the delinquencies that we budget for our CPD, if we don't end up having to pay that, does that money?
It would be the recommendation that we start having a cash reserve, very similar to what we do with our others. So we wouldn't have to budget for that or raise the mill levy for that in the future. We
so
also
could
know
keep
that,
rolled over or like keep that in a,
yeah, and we also know that when, delinquencies do end up coming through, but they're in arrears. And so we would also recommend that as those delinquencies come through, that those would be that portion that is related to the 30.924 that is for our CPD, that those would be kept in that cash reserve so we wouldn't have to do this.
No more questions for Danielle? Are there questions from the public?
Andrew Von Lintel, 225 Four Winds Court. Just a quick question, so are we stopping at 1.1? Aren't we stopping at 1.75? Why do we have to post 2 mills? Just a technical in the newspaper question.
Could you answer that question for him?
well, we can answer that through
Yeah.
our general
We don't
discussion.
usually- Okay,
Right, we haven't voted to take it down to 1.75. We've indicated that's what we want to do, so that's why we have the analysis. But since we haven't voted, we still have options.
Yeah, and we don't technically need a vote tonight. We just need consensus of what we want to publish, and whatever we publish, we cannot exceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gary Oles, 3308 Frontier Circle. In spite of the tension, I really appreciate the interaction and trying to deal with the numbers from the citizen standpoint, because I know it's got to be difficult because, you know, it's math.
And it's John's math.
Well, I mean, you can call it
balanced
John's
math.
math, but, you know, it's very interesting. And that's from a macro level, as you know, because you're looking at, 30,000 feet. I just want to bring it down for a second to my house. Since 1997, my city property taxes have gone up 249%, about $3,300. When I was in sales to overcome people's objections for cellular phone cost or service cost or pager cost, you bring it down to the lowest dollar. They see it per day. So in the 28 years times 12 months, we've only paid $10 more per month for city services in terms of property taxes, including our CPD. So some would say, oh, $10 a month more, that's not much. But we have lived here 28 years, so it's still $3,300 and a 249% increase. And that's just anecdotal. Those are not actually dead numbers. I like John's idea with regards to paying our CPD out of property tax dollars. Quite honestly, I don't think Riley County actually pays their 20% out of property tax dollars. I think they do the same thing in terms of where the money comes from. But it's all in the general fund, so, I guess it depends. It's an accounting issue in terms of how it's tracked. But speaking of our CPD, and this really speaks to the issue because I was not able to go to the RCPD or the law board meeting. I just want to point out that, Riley County law enforcement, relative to other cities of comparable size, cities, counties, is, as you know, pretty inexpensive. If you divide it by the per capita based on the budget of
I don't remember what their budget is, it's about $400 per person. And that's really good because that's a lot less expensive than other cities. When you look at it that way, because these are my numbers, okay? Like John's numbers, these are my numbers. For my wife and I on a $270,000 home, we have the privilege each of paying $800 for law enforcement, $1,600 a year to be safe. Now, some would say, oh, that's a bargain. I gotta say, 10 years from now when it's $2,500, can I afford that? Because I'm on a fixed income. And I think of that for other people. That's why Pottawatomie County looks good to a lot of people and has over the last, 20 years.
Thank you.
Wow, that was good timing.
Are there any other comments? Don't forget to sign in, Gary. Okay, thank you very much. Seeing none. Okay, back to the commission. Maybe we just want to do a straw vote since we're not making any, just to give Danielle some feeling for, 2.75 or 1.75, sorry. Yeah, how about that? Let's all go for that. 1.75, just kind of,
Just to publish in the paper?
we,
Or are we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct,
okay.
just to publish in the paper for the hearing on September 16th. And then you all will have to make a decision on September 16th of what you want that mill levy to be.
right. I mean, I was gonna give you the option of 1 point, the other one, but just to see where people are. I mean, I think it basically comes down to kind of what we wanna do for staff. And I think it's really important that we keep our pay schedules up to date, or else we, as I've said too many times, we end up having to jack everything up and get back to normal, so.
Well, I think we could ask for other scenarios. We could look at shifting some of the funding different ways to get that salary increase. I don't think we have to increase taxes as much as we say we're doing. I meant to print this chart, but I was so busy doing these other numbers. But it's just showing, I had to look it up on the internet. It goes from 97 to 2024. And I came here in 98, so close to when I came here. Property taxes have gone up over 400%. The inflation change is not quite 100%, and the population and the mill rate's really not gone up all that much at all, and the population hasn't gone up much at all either. So that's the compounding factor of what we're talking about here.
Of course, John, coffee's gone up from $1.
I had inflation, had population growth.
I'm talking about coffee in the grocery store.
That's inflation.
$10.
Coffee's not in the CPI, John.
And
So-
we do have to,
So I know you're so intense on increasing these taxes, Peter. There's nothing I can say.
You're right.
and
I
sway-
do. I just want to tax people as much as I possibly can. In fact, I only want the richest
Peter,
people
gonna say
to live in Manhattan.
Be careful, the mercury.
Yeah, Francis is back there right now.
no.
I will say, Karen, I'll just jump in. I think the 1.134 for RCPD and library is appropriate, and including the delinquency, where although I don't have a crystal ball, I don't see me going up to scenario C personally. I'm in the scenario B, A. I would like to see staff raises. I think we've talked about the significance of those over retention bonuses, but I would like us to be able to, as we discussed at the retreat, I do think it's important that we do something for employees. So just from where we're at on what we're publishing, me knowing that I'm not comfortable going up to the 1.75, I don't foresee me doing that.
You feel more comfortable with the B option?
I feel more comfortable publishing the B. Is
I kind of wish we would, I mean, we're not gonna vote or anything tonight, but I do think constantly asking for different reports from staff, we kind of know what, we've had this information for 2 months. And 2.5 months, and I hate to see us on the 16th, nickel and diming, kind of the way we do when we get down to the last sometimes. And I think what's important is how do we run this city efficiently and as economically as possible, and protect people with fire and police and safe water and safe, other things, and have a staff which is very capable. I mean, you can cut staff costs and you'll probably not get people of the same caliber. So, if we want efficient people who will save us money, we need to pay them right, so.
Plus,
Anyway.
Well, I guess that's the challenge. We want people that can save us money. We also have to challenge them to do that.
but we also know the costs of onboarding new people, the learning curve, the additional recruitment costs, bringing it, it's much preferable to maintain a engaged staff that wants to do their work and wants to be appropriately compensated for it.
And may not really have a choice to stay with the city if they're offered significant more money in other places. I mean, it's great to say we're a wonderful working environment, but you have to pay for groceries. So, is there kind of a thought that number B is, Peter, where are you?
I just want to make sure that we're able to pay our staff.
So you're more into C?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Okay, I
this is essentially, if we publish B, that's what we're gonna go with.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we're pretty much making our decision tonight.
Yeah.
And if we're okay with that, then fine. I do want to apologize to John and to you. That my outburst was inappropriate. I do still take a little bit of umbrage with the way that you broke down the shift of city services to property taxes. I believe there is a philosophy there that it is more reliable source of funding for us to rely on property taxes. So I think from what I have interpreted with discussions with our city staff, that has been the philosophy, is saying, let's fund our city services with dependable revenue that we can plan on at the beginning of the year instead of the sales tax and things like that. And that's a philosophy. That's an opinion. We're not here
Right, so it's
nitpicking the expenses.
a shift to property tax.
Sure. And one could argue against sales taxes because of the regressive nature. All taxes, I guess, could be argued as
Well,
being
then I think
somewhat-
we're in agreement. It's a shift to property tax. You're just more comfortable with the shift to property tax.
Sure. And I do agree with you, however, that I wish we would just fund RCPD, just fund the most simple line items with property taxes, so we don't have to sit here nickel and dime next year over the mill levy. Again, we could completely cut our city services total, and it would cut somebody's property tax by about $100 a year.
That's how we get to 400%.
Okay. So yeah, it's a shift to dependable income, and it's not necessarily a shift that we're spending more taxes or we're being inappropriate or irresponsible. It is that we have chosen to shift to dependable revenue. That's it.
So, then, should we publish, what level would you like to see us publish at?
I'm for the
Well, I
lowest
don't
level
see it in
possible.
it, but
All you did with ICPD.
Well, I guess, yeah, let's do it with the 135, and we'll go with that.
I can live with that.
Okay, I think you have your direction, 1, 2, 3, 5.
I have a request for you, John. Since we are close to approving the budget, we will not be doing this type of analysis too much more frequently while you are here. However, in the future, could you perhaps provide your analyses ahead of time?
Yes, actually, that's a very, very good
and-
point, because I have
And with some narrative, because frankly, I find your reasoning not as straightforward and easily understood, particularly when the numbers are in size 3 font.
Yeah, well, let me say, I really would like to get the information for our meeting, the presentation on the Thursday before. But, because then I kind of wait to do this till I see that. So literally, I'm doing it a couple hours before the meeting. It would be good to get that ahead of time, so like Peter does these Saturday things, he could take it to it.
Yeah.
And go over it. We've got candidates running for office. That would be a good thing for them to take ahead of time, and it would put them on the record before they hear what happens at the meeting and what they think about it. And
All the,
stuff.
all the information that was in your presentation tonight was in the memo.
Right, but I didn't know if there was gonna be something new or anything else.
that.
Like I've often asked, if could we get a number that compares total taxes this year to last year? Haven't seen that. I think I totally accept that criticism of my stuff,
Suggestion.
but I've
Suggestion.
been doing it right on the fly, waiting to see what the presentation was.
Okay,
So Danielle, a question for you then. On the 16th, you're coming with two scenarios, one scenario?
one.
No, on the 16th, I was planning on coming with one scenario based on
with the
direction this
salary-
evening.
With the salary ordinance as well for and that included the COLA 2.4?
Yes.
Okay, are we good? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a city manager briefing, or is that
I
just
don't think
printed
so,
out?
do we? Nope.
No, it is not
Okay.
on the agenda. It is
Oh,
printed
it's not on
out
the
for you. However, I did have one thing I wanted to mention to you all. If you could please potentially hold September 29th. That is a fifth Tuesday, but we might need a special. Sorry, September 23rd, 30th, September 30th. Apologize. It's a lot of numbers.
Sometime in September.
If you could please hold the fifth Tuesday in September for a possible special meeting. We might need that meeting to accept our audit, to make sure that we get that done on time this year.
Great, good news. Do we have to?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.